Why I chose self-storage was, one, I had a familiarity from a while ago. And I think just like everybody else, there's a lot of benefits to it. During COVID, a lot of people had issues with tenants not paying. Well, that didn't happen. In fact, people were paying their storage units faster because we could still auction their stuff. Most of the time, I don't have to go to court to auction somebody's stuff. I don't have to deal with bathrooms. I don't have to deal with toilets. I don't have to deal with a lot of stuff. Common space really is basically concrete, steel, a drainage plan, lighting, video surveillance, and a gating system. And outside of that, technology kind of takes over a lot of that.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 379. Charlie Gao is an expert in many aspects of commercial real estate, with a concentration in self-storage acquisitions and development. He's recognized nationally as an expert in self-storage, and he consults with investors all over the country. He'll be speaking next week at the Inside Self-Storage World-Wide Expo at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. And Charlie is also a friend of the show who first appeared way back on episode 96, and he interviewed me on episode 100. Since then, we've actually partnered on several self-storage deals together. Charlie, welcome back to the show. It's been way too long.
Yeah, I know. When you said 300 something, I was like, wow, I didn't realize it's been that long since I've been back on.
Why don't you just give us, in a nutshell, bring us up to speed on what you're up to now?
I think one of the biggest pivots we made in our business is that we have solely focused on commercial real estate. And more importantly, I made a strong pivot to commercial real estate, in particular self-storage. I felt that, one, the tax treatment I was getting investing in the residential real estate realm was not quite as advantageous to me. And then, I had to take a big step back because I was doing quite a bit in the multifamily space. And to focus on self-storage, I basically took a six-figure loss on my business to just kind of make that transition. So flash forward today, we've built and planned over 3 million square feet of self-storage, which is kind of crazy because I think I was in the middle of my probably first or second storage deal probably at the time that we had our first interview.
Really interesting that you took a six-figure loss in your main business to focus more on self-storage. Why did you decide to do that?
People always say that, it's better to go like, an inch wide and 7 miles deep. And I think part of the reason why is because they try to do two things well. I had this problem where early on I had a property management company while I was trying to grow my rental portfolio. And I realized I was doing two things average rather than one thing excellent. And so as a result, what I did was I basically sold my property management company and magically, my rental portfolio 10x within, 2 years. So it was the same philosophy here that I'd rather do one thing really, really well than rather than doing two things okay. And I really couldn't commit the time I needed to if I was committing so much time to my multifamily, my brokerage side of the business. So as a result, we pretty much stopped investing that side of the business. It still actually kept growing even after we stopped. But I was able to transition a lot of my time to self-storage so I could really focus on that because, investing 10 hours a week into something versus 40 hours a week is completely different. And I saw how well that worked with finding deals, underwriting them, getting through deals faster as far as overall analysis. And so, in the first year or two, if you asked me, I would probably said, I don't know. I don't know if it's working out well for me. But then in the long run, though, obviously it's worked out very well in my favor.
You could go down any path and be successful. Why self-storage?
That's actually one of my problems is I'm good at a lot of things. And so I like taking on challenges. Why I chose self-storage was, one, I had a familiarity from a while ago. And I think just like everybody else, there's a lot of benefits to it. During COVID, a lot of people had issues with tenants not paying. Well, that didn't happen. In fact, people were paying their storage units faster because we could still auction their stuff. Most of the time, I don't have to go to court to auction somebody's stuff. I don't have to deal with bathrooms. I don't have to deal with toilets. I don't have to deal with a lot of stuff. Common space really is basically concrete, steel, a drainage plan, lighting, video surveillance, and a gating system. And outside of that, technology kind of takes over a lot of that. Now, obviously, there are some concerns with, self-storage having a low barrier to entry as well. But I felt that this was a good change up from what I had because I could apply a lot of the things I learned in multifamily or asset classes to self-storage. And then more importantly, too, as well, I had systems in place from when I had managed for other people along the way that I felt that I could really bring a competitive advantage. I feel I have a competitive advantage already because of the fact that, I have a lending background and I have a building construction background. But I also have a really strong operations background because I worked as a property manager for a number of facilities. So across the board, you look at all the line items that you have for self-storage, the efficiencies that I was able to bring to the table across the board at every single line item, we could save 3% here, 4% here. And then you add up all those line items together, and I could really force a lot of value just by my operational efficiencies. And so that was kind of one of the reasons why I decided that would be a strong pivot.
Take us through the process you go through in identifying either an acquisition in self-storage that makes sense or development in self-storage.
So all of it always starts from feasibility. We have 3 levels of feasibility studies we do. The first is typically I'll kind of start from the very beginning. So if I see a listing or my assistant sees a property that we think that might work for development, what we'll do then is we'll add that in and then to a list. And then once a week, they use our various platforms to analyze the square foot per capita. And so that's kind of our phase 1 test. So in West Michigan, we know that 8.55 square foot per capita is the suggested square feet. Now, when you get in more rural areas, unfortunately, you still have to use that number. It's kind of a blanket number that's widely accepted for our market in the industry. But we'll do 15 or 20, maybe only 5 at a time. And then from there, normally we only have 2 or 3. If we have 6 that look really good, we just kind of focus on the top 2 or 3. And then that's our level 1. Then from there, we go into level 2. And from our level 2, now we're looking at the demographics of the area. So what type of tenant are we going to attract? Are we attracting a tenant that is lower income, which means that we probably can't charge higher rents? Or do we have good rental rates across it? If I'm getting 30 cents a square foot in a market, it doesn't matter how much storage I can build. That's not feasible for me to build. So then that's the second thing. And then the third thing is we're also looking at a metric called AADT, which is average annual daily traffic. So once we analyze those 2, then basically they go through a second round of, does this make sense for us at this point in time? And then once we get through the second round, if it really goes through, then we're going to a full-blown feasibility study, where at that point, we're actually breaking down unit sizes, the type of unit mix, and we're actually starting to build out the first couple of pages of pro forma.
And once you do the feasibility study, by the way, I think knowing how you operate, you do your own feasibility study, but then there are also third-party feasibility studies you can order as well, right?
So we've gotten well past this stage. As you probably noticed on one of our deals, the first deal that we did, the bank, we had a feasibility study in-house that we did. The feasibility study company that looked at it basically copied all but one single page and then gave it to us, and then we gave it to the bank. And then I basically went back to the bank. I'm like, listen, this was actually before I was speaking for ISS, but I'm like, do I really have to do these? Because I'm basically paying somebody $3,000, $4,000 to copy what I did. And so the bank said, no, you don't have to. We trust you know what you're doing. And now that I'm now a correspondent, both on blogging and a national speaker for ISS, really nationally, I don't have that issue. Yeah, actually, honestly, one of the issues we have had actually is that we teach a course for doing your own feasibility study. And we actually had something that we provided the template for. They copied our template, but not only did they copy our template, but they also copied our name. So I got a contact a couple months later where somebody said, hey, I saw that you did this feasibility study. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. And I'm like, I didn't do this feasibility study. And they're like, well, it's got your name on it. I'm like, so they basically wanted to learn from us, but they also wanted to steal our branding because we would be accepted as a third party. So unfortunately, we can't do that anymore. We can't provide people a template where we teach them a course. We can provide them a hard copy, but I look at it also as a positive now that people look at it as so reputable that they're trying to profit off of using our brand for doing their own feasibility studies.
You do the feasibility study, and then you identify a property where you say, okay, there's enough land to do what we want. We can build and get that income per square foot that we desire. What's next? What do you do?
They overlap a little bit, but then the next step is basically our site planning stage. And so our site planning, if you look at how much somebody spends on it, is actually probably one of the most expensive kind of courses we have. But what we would do is, like, let's say that I'm not actually on site and I'm having somebody else to go through. I spend, or when I say it's actually my staff, spends about 30 minutes to an hour to review the site. We look at soil reports online, which are readily available. We look at core samples if they're available from the previous and the past. And then we would go through ordinances. And from there, we are actually building out a tentative site plan, also based on the type of units that we want to as well. So if I want to go with 20-foot wide buildings, I can go with smaller driveways, but 20-foot wide buildings are more expensive than 40-foot wide buildings. And also I have more driveways I have to build too as well. So what we were doing at this point in time is we're leveraging our building construction management experience, as well as our experience of working for a variety of engineers to draw up a plan. And then at that point in time, that plan will then get turned around and given to a site engineer. And so why that's really important is because the average person, and surprisingly, I didn't make this mistake, even though most of the time I make every newbie mistake possible, but they'll say, here, engineer, this is the site, give me as much storage as possible. And then there's no metrics whatsoever. And so the guy basically will build it out. And then it's like, well, it turns out we can't do 40-foot wide buildings because we need a lot of smaller units. So I can't do 10-foot or 10-foot deep units on a 40-foot wide building unless I have 10-foot deep on one side and 30-foot deep on the other side. And so then there's all this going back and forth. And then you talk with the steel guy, and then the steel guy will say, hey, this layout is okay, but just so you know, this layout's also one of the more expensive layouts. So then they got to go back to the engineer. And then the engineer's like, okay, well, I just spent 2 months on this. They got to charge you a few $1,000s to do that. So really, that's one of the sources of value add for us is we do that process so efficiently that there is no like in between where we're going back and forth because we're hearing feedback from our excavator, we're hearing feedback from our steel guy, we're getting feedback from our concrete guy that, hey, I know this works best for drainage, but this does not work best for build costs. So that's kind of what we're doing is we're really balancing out those four things: build costs, site plan, cost itself, the engineering, and then the cost of the actual buildings itself. Those four things get factored into what we do when we build out a site plan.
What comes next then? So you do the site plan, you have your engineers, your designer, you've got everything on paper that you want to do. Talk about the next process and make sure you mention like just dealing with city planners and getting approvals.
Yeah. So from that step, typically we're pretty confident at where we're at in that process. Normally when we had that site plan drawn up, we're comfortable with spending a few $1,000s, even if we were to lose it to get an engineer started, because normally at some point, waiting for the engineer to get everything they need is going to be the bottleneck. That's typically the case because we work so fast in the back end. So we will initiate that, and then we will start building out our 17-page pro forma, which pretty much every page of that pro forma goes through a process. So we build out a pro forma rent roll. Okay, does this look good? We build out, then if that looks good, then we build out, we build out tentative building construction plan for what the budget would be. That looks good. Then we move to our next stage, which is we build out the pro forma rent roll. That looks good. Then we move over. So we keep building out each page of pro forma. And then I keep basically approving whether we move on to the next step until we have a full 17 to 20 page pro forma. And then at that point in time, normally that takes us only about 2 to 3 weeks to build out. So if that looked horrible, I'm probably only a couple $1,000s into my engineering, which typically that is just the cost of the soil samples or the corings for the site, which is only a few $1,000s. So if it didn't look good at that point, then I can just say, hey, tell the engineer you need to stop. And then we just lose a few $1,000. But then from there, once we do finish that, now we are significantly investing in ordering plans. If we really want to move the site along, we might even order the steel plans on top of that as well, just so that we can see on a tight timeline. Because really right now, especially like Well, we discussed this. I mean, on building construction rates for the financing, probably somewhere between 7.75% and 8.5%. If you go SBA. If you go conventional, they're a little bit lower, but you're going for much lower LTV. So, if you could save 3 to 4 months on your construction time, that could be savings of, $30,000 to $80,000 right there, just on your construction budget.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB & Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. You're talking about having the funds to get going on site development before you even close on the construction loan.
Yeah, carry costs and whatnot.
And we've done that. I mean, we've closed on our last development. We closed on the loan and we were almost done building the site.
That's kind of another source of value add that we've been able to create too as well, is that the bank was willing to give us much better financing because we were so far along in construction, whereas most people are doing the construction loan and then basically building out. But we knew that, at a worst case scenario, we could just go with really, really conservative debt if we had to move forward because we were well capitalized.
I do want you to mention working with the city and the planners and making sure that you get those approvals. What is that process typically like?
Normally, the first call you make, they're really quick about yes or no, because most of the time you don't have self-storage as a pre-approved use. Most of the time, it is a use that is permitted with approval. So my first call is always to, hey, how do you feel about this? And most time they always say yes or no. So right off the bat, if we know that they're in our corner for that's a good process for recruiting from that. And then from there, there's a matter of metrics. Like, do they require that we have a certain type of surface for our driveways? Do they have a certain requirement for lighting? Do they have a certain requirement for the foliage? I've been in, I'll use Alpine Township as the area, but they require a comprehensive landscaping plan. So Alpine Township is basically Comstock Park in Allendale, Michigan. And it's kind of like our landscaping plan is grass. You want me to spend $3,000 to basically say we're going to have grass here, but then sometimes they'll also have, and this happens a lot, that like, oh, we need a certain amount of trees. And I'm like, okay, we can put those trees there, but the whole reason we don't want trees there is because we want roadside frontage. But secondly, in 10 years, those trees are going to overgrown. I'm going to have to cut them down anyway. So that's an obstacle. Lighting is another obstacle. Sometimes they want lighting that sprays downward. And, and there's instances where I'm like, well, I got 60-foot wide driveways because people are going to be parking boats and RVs. I can't have light spray downwards or else it's going to be pitch black dark in the middle of my driveway. So those are all things that, we have to kind of consider and we have to effectively communicate to them. Sometimes, we deal with areas that they don't allow pouch storage, for example. I'm like, well, do you allow pouch storage if it's not available? So if you ask them a question, they'll say yes or no. But if you can ask the question a different way, like, well, how could we have pouch storage? Can we do it where just the pouch storage is not visible? So in knowing those questions to ask, those are the big things that we've been able to do to kind of value add. So like, with pods, for example, that's a whole nother realm as well. But pods are actually more expensive than building self-storage, but there's certain benefits to on the tax side that it's a 100% write-off in year one. And so if you're looking for depreciation or your investors are looking for depreciation, that's a different way that you can structure a deal too as well.
A pod is a kind of a non-permanent storage solution. So it's like you see them in people's driveways when they're moving. You're talking about just bringing a pod to site. And that's very different from the actual structure that you would be building.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing people do containers. They're seeing new pods like that are actually movable, which that's a whole nother business model too as well. The biggest thing about it is most cities do not like pods for the reason that pods are not an improvement to the land. So if you have 100,000 piece of land and you put 500 pods on it, they're taxing you as if that property is worth $100,000 still, not worth a few $1,000,000, which is what commercial real estate would normally value at because it's valued on income. So for that reason, a lot of municipalities we work with do not like pods because they say, oh, they don't look good. But, in reality, it just makes sense. Like it doesn't benefit our community that, we're not getting any more taxable money. Whereas like Newaygo, one of the ones that we did, they were on board, but they weren't all the way on board. But we have a simple conversation with them. Like, I feel this is a significant benefit to the community. You look at this plot of land, you guys are making $1,200 in property taxes on a year. Whereas once we finish building, what you're going to make $45,000, $65,000, $70,000 in property taxes a year. So from that standpoint, we really are able to argue why we think it's a benefit to the community. Besides the fact that also it's safe. We target on safety because that's another thing issue with that. A lot of storage facilities have poor lighting. They don't have AC video cameras, and 2/3 of the tenants in the United States are female. So we try to make it a really holistic approach how we sell it. We really try to put our shoes in the shoes of the community on when somebody drives by this, what issues are they going to have? Like one of the pivots that we made was ordinance is that lights have to spray downwards and they cannot spray out a certain amount of feet. So we said, okay, well, can we do the outside rows with downward spraying? But my inside rows that are hundreds of feet away from their perimeter, can I have those spray out 60 feet so we get adequate coverage of our driveways? So, it all just comes with experience, but, we find as best of a solution to work with the community, as well as foreseeing what the community might bring up as an objection for why they might not want a self-storage site in the future.
And when you do take that holistic approach in developing and building out the facility, what are some of the things you want to make sure you add that help automate it and kind of future-proof it for a sale or for just, running it potentially without having someone on site?
I can't remember where I heard this. The quote goes as that any company that is not a technology company within 3 years will be a technology company. And if they are not a technology company, they will cease to exist in 10 years. And self-storage is the perfect example of that. Like when I was self-storage back 20 years ago when I was in high school, there was no technology. Everything was basically like a spreadsheet on Excel. And then you had a taped color chart on a dry erase board. And that's how we kind of manage everything. Now pretty much everybody has a software. If they don't have a call center, they have multiple people taking calls. And then lockout processes are now getting automated where you have automated doors, you have Bluetooth doors, or, in our case, we even have a locking system where you can look up the lock code via a cloud-based platform to do that as well. So really, it starts from, I would say, software and call center, even though a lot of mom and pops don't do that. And then from there, you're trying to leverage SEO because now you're dealing with service business with reviews. So you got to fight that market because, I have had facilities before where, honestly, if you asked me, I'd be the first to tell you that we're probably not even the nicest facility in the market, but we are the most visible on social media. So as a result, people assume that's the nicest one in the market too as well. So that I would say those are musts. And then from there, we also have been making a pivot too as well now where people do want service. They don't want to go to a complete empty facility with no staff. So, one of our top performers, as you know, we have a full-time staff that does in and outs of boats. They're very visible on the site and the people do like that customer service. And so that's site, we have talked about, we're actually exploring doing car wash on site because we have so many RVs that we could also wash and do that as well. And so when you add those services on, that also separates you too from the person down the road that's offering just self-storage. So we can offer storage. We can store your boat, we can store your RV, we can store your car, we can store your toys because some of our units even have electrical outlets. And then on top of that, now we could possibly even add the fact that now we can also wash your boat or get it wrapped, or we can arrange for it by partnering with a third party. So I think that is the future of self-storage, is now to add these experiences or these additional services where you're becoming one-stop shop. Just kind of like when you go to an arena, you get your gasoline there, you get your boat, you buy some snacks, you get some ice for your cooler. I think that's going to be kind of the future of self-storage now, is now you become more full service. So you're not competing with just a technology company.
What does your future in self-storage look like?
A lot of the goals I set for self-storage, we kind of obliterated those. I honestly did not even think about becoming a national speaker for one of the largest self-storage organizations just a couple of years ago. It just happened that, I was just focused on putting out good content. So my consulting business, I would like to expand that, because while I do my consulting business, I also learn about really, really strong markets, which is allow us to basically penetrate or essentially get paid to learn how to invest in other markets. We've gone officially now international. Now we've done consultations on Canada and Mexico as well. So my process now is we're really a Midwest-based company, but our focus now is shifting the focus to strong markets that show even more promise than the markets that we're in now, to grow our self-storage facility nationwide.
One of the things that you do is you record a lot of YouTube videos that really, if someone is interested in self-storage and development and construction, these are like master classes. So while we're on that topic, tell people where they can go to watch some of your YouTube videos.
So in YouTube, you just type in @Twin Oaks Capital, and then you'll go directly to our channel. So some of our videos have, I think, like 20,000 views on it. I will say, though, that we get a lot of people that are saying that, hey, it's too complicated. My advice to them is just go to somebody else. Like, I'm not trying to cater to hundreds of thousands of viewers. I'm really trying to cater to people that have taken action, but are really trying to take that next step. And so I will say that we get in the weeds. Like, I talk about specifically how I like to pour concrete a very specific way. So if you're looking for kind of like, hey, where do I begin? That's not the channel for you. But if you want legit advice that people have probably paid hundreds or thousands for, we put that in, and all our content actually comes from consulting sessions with clients, or if we get a consistent question over and over again, rather than just sharing it with one person, we try to share it to the world, because that's our way of giving back.
And then you're speaking next week, what is it, April 11th at ISS?
So kind of funny, it'll probably be one of the largest speaking engagements I ever had. And I'm going to be flying back from Africa the day before, home for a nap, and then basically flying back out to speak at ISS. So kind of excited, but I'm a little bit nervous, about a flight delay or something along the way. So, but I will be speaking on 3 different speaker series. The first one has not been really officially approved, but to kind of give you a hint, I'm kind of theming it based off of a very popular movie from the 90s, I want to say. And then my other one is based, I think the topic is called something along the lines of My Pain, Your Gain, the tough lessons I've learned while building and planning over 3 million square feet of self-storage. And then the third one will basically just be kind of like an excerpt panel where people can ask me whatever questions they want for 30 minutes. And that's just a Q&A panel.
One of the things I admire about you is you accomplish a lot, but you also maintain a really incredible balance with family and your personal life. How do you do that?
I learned this kind of when I focus on self-storage by doing less, is that, I have razor focus on kind of what I accomplish. So, I was with a private equity group, actually multiple private equity groups. And when you're with the private equity group, you're doing millions of dollars of transactions, but you have hundreds of mouths to feed. So I might have 4% or 5% of $100 million portfolio. But when I looked at it, I'm like, so I got $2 million from this $100 million transactions, but I got 10 to 14 calls a week that I got to jump on. I got people constantly asking me for what I think about something along the process. And I'm like, you know what? I could do one $15 million deal, one $10 million deal with somebody like Brian, get 25 or 50% of the deal. And ultimately, I could do one deal, or I could do 10 deals and still have the same amount of equity with a lot less work. So what we essentially done is we decided, let's just focus on fewer deals. We run them really, really efficiently, because I don't have to focus on managing 20 facilities. There's not a huge staff of 30 people to get on board that, we have a staff of 4 or 5. And so our investors have noticed that, as well as myself personally, that we're running things so efficiently. Nobody can run these facilities more efficient than we do as a result. And so now that is also nice because one of my struggles, I have now is that I only work 15 to 20 hours a week. And so, I have a lot of new people that reach out to me that say, hey, I wanted to reach out to you. And it's like, well, yes, I have the time, but I didn't work 50, 60 hours a week. So I could have 20 hours available to talk to new investors. And so really what focuses my day is really planned out how my priorities are. So I wake up at 7:35. I get a solid 8 hours sleep every day or more. From that, when I wake up, it's basically make breakfast for the kids, take them off to school because that's my priority. I enjoy making their lunch and breakfast, or my wife will do it. And then from there, drop them off at school. Then I go straight to the gym. And after I go to that gym, I actually normally go to my second gym and go rock climbing. So I get my 3 things I want to do. I got my family out of the way because that's the first thing I want to do is take care of them. I got my health out of the way. And then my third thing is I got my hobby out of the way. I want to do those things. And then from there, I might even take it a 4th step where I'll cold plunge or do infrared sauna or whatever. So my work day actually doesn't actually start until 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the afternoon. My staff has got a head start in the day, and then I come back at 12, and then I'm basically checking emails, working from 12 to 3. And then from there, kids pick them up, all their stuff, their soccer practices and whatnot. And then I do basically a couple more hours of work in the evening. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that, like, if you call me and say, hey, I have a $100,000 decision on this deal, I'm not going to do that. But I've separated myself in the business by training my staff appropriately that I don't have to be on site every single time. For the really, really big stuff, yes. But I also know these sites so well that I can specifically tell somebody like, hey, I need you to go to this site. This is what I'm looking for. I need you to specifically look at this section of the fence because I'm worried about the soil quality being poor from when I was out there last. So by giving very, very concise instructions, I can pretty much operate remotely from any part of the world.
What's your favorite hack or app?
I'll say Google Earth or OnX. The reason why OnX Hunt is an app that allows you to determine that you're hunting on your land or somebody else's land. Because, if you kill a deer on somebody else's land, then you technically that's their deer. So that you're breaking the law essentially. But I also use it for walking the property line for my self-storage facilities that I'm potentially looking at. So if I'm walking a site, I can see like, wait, is that wetland on our land or is it on the other person's land next to us? So I like to use that as a tool for basically walking the land to determine the feasibility for building and also potentially addressing any concerns I might have for the site that I'm building on.
You're using a hunting app for looking at self-storage property. Spell that out for us so we know what you're talking here.
ONX. And I think it's just, if you just type in ONX, you should find it. Because now I think they realize other people are using it for stuff besides hunting. So now I think they have like an OnX Realtor app, an OnX Hunt app, and things like that as well.
Let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and or get a hold of you, and mention your YouTube again.
Easiest way by far is go to youtube.com at Twin Oaks Capital. You're going to find a lot of information there. I always say that 95% of the time when I get an email from somebody, a lot of times it's been answered in one of those videos. And if it hasn't, it's either because we just chose not to, because we got to be cognizant of that. I have clients paying for me to give them advice, so I can't give away everything for free. So obviously that would be the first start. And then beyond that, they're just trying to follow what we're doing in real time, kind of seeing progress at Instagram at Charles C. KAO. So if you're looking for strictly education, go to the YouTube channel. If you want to follow what we're doing, or if you're actually looking at to possibly invest in any of our deals, Instagram is the best way to kind of see that. And then from there, you can access our investor channel as well.
Charlie, thanks for coming back on the show. It's always great talking with you. And you've accomplished so much since the last time you were here. And I've enjoyed working with you and being part of a couple of your projects. And always amazing how you think through and approach self-storage and any investment that you make. Thank you for sharing some of that thought process with us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.